Alright, so for this series of videos, we'll be working on web authoring, which is usually found in your paper 3. Now for this one, we're going to work on first the May-June 2014 paper 3, variation 1. Okay, so let's look at question number 3. It says create a single style sheet called tmcp.css using the following styles, right? Now in order to create a CSS file, you need to make use of Microsoft Expression Web, which can be found here. Okay, so once you open it, you'll be brought to this screen, and usually you will see untitled_1.html. Now, because you want to create a CSS file, okay, this is not the correct place for you to create it. Okay, this is for you to edit a HTML file. So what you need to do is go to File, New, and then select CSS. All right, you'll notice untitled_1.css. So right now, what we're going to do is we're going to save as, and you got to save it inside the correct folder. Okay, I'm going to call it tmcp.css, and save as type, I'm going to select CSS. Why? Because I'm paranoid. Okay, I click save. If that's, I actually edited this file previously, okay, so I'm just going to override it. Okay, so you will come to an empty CSS file, so let's look at the first one. Okay, so the selector is body, and you need to work on the background. So what you need to do is go to New Style, select Background, and in the selector type in body. Okay, so background image, it says that it needs to use the j1431bg.jpg and it is tiled. So we'll go to browse, go to the correct folder, and search for the correct image. Okay, now when it says it's tiled, right, it means that it wants it to be repeated. So we will select repeat and click OK. So for the first selector, we are done. Let's move on to the next one. For the heading 1 selector, it has a few different modifications to be made. Okay, it needs the font face, the first choice to be Arial, and the default would be the browser's default sans serif font. Right, so let's go to New Style again. Select H1. Font family, we will say the first choice is Arial, and then it says sans serif, right? But in the question, it does not want Helvetica. So what we'll do is very simple. We'll just remove Helvetica. Okay, now the comma here means it will first use Arial, and if Arial does not exist, it will make use of the browser's default sans serif font, which is what the question wants. Right, so next it says alignment center. So in the block here, text align, select center, CENTER, make sure you type CENTER and not TRE. It's a trick. Now go back to font, because it also says that the font size should be 32 pixels. So 32 pixels for PX. Alright, we are done for H1. Again, click OK. You will see another new selector created here. Okay, remember to save periodically. Oops. Now let's move on to H3. Same thing, New Style. Remember to type in H3 in the selector. Font face, the browser's default serif font, right? So just type serif. Alignment, fully justified. Again, go to block, text align, select justify. Size 16 pixels. So go back to font size 16 pixels. Done. Simple. Now let's look at P for paragraph. Again, New Style. This time the selector is P. The font face is the browser's default sans serif font, so just type in sans serif. Alignment, fully justified block, text align, justify, size 12 pixels. Press OK. Now you will have 4 selectors. Moving on, LI, which means list item. Okay, same thing, New Style, LI. So right now you're working on list, so everything should be under list. Okay, it says numbered list starting at 1. So for your list style type, what you need to do is to select decimal. This means that it will start at 1 all the way until 10 or 1,000 or 100. Okay, so alignment, again, go back to block, text align. This time you select left. Okay, now continuing on to the table selector. Now for the borders, it needs all borders to be collapsed. So what we're going to do, same thing, New new style. In here we type in table. So first thing first, we'll work on the border. Now border, you have to go to table. For border collapse, you select collapse because it wants all borders to be collapsed. Now for solid lines, all solid lines for the border, move on to border. Now because it says all solid lines, make sure that same for all is checked. And this means that whatever you fill in top here will also apply to right, bottom, and left. Now it says all solid lines, so for here, we're going to select solid. Border width, external line width, 3 pixels. So this means it is the external line or the outside border of the table should be 3 pixels. We're going to type 3. Now for internal grid lines, we're going to skip and not put it in the table selector because the table selector works on the outside of the table and not inside the table. Okay, so for the width 300 pixels and the height, the width 600 pixels and the height 300 pixels, we need to go to position, the width 600 pixels and the height 300 pixels. Alright, so click OK. The new table selector will be created. Now remember, just now we actually talked about the internal grid line width of 1 pixel. Now that has to be TD. TD meaning the cell of the table. Okay, so for that we're going to create a new style. We're going to type in TD and only work on one category, which is the internal grid line. So border. The border style, the same thing should be solid, and the border width should be 1 pixels. So you will have this one that only targets the internal grid line width of 1 pixel for the table. Right, moving on to applying colors to all the different selectors. Let's look at H1 first. It says it wants a combination of 0 for red, 0 for green, and 40 for blue. Now, in hexadecimal colors, okay, your color codes are actually made up of 2 digits of red, 2 digits of green, and 2 digits of blue, starting with a hashtag. Okay, so usually how it would look like is, for example, if all your red, greens, and blues are 0, it will be hashtag 000000. This will actually give you black. Now, the other spectrum would be hashtag FF, FF, FF. This would give you white. Now 0 meaning nothing, F means the highest number. Okay, so let's look at H1. Now it says it needs red 0, green 0, and blue 40. So the correct color code will be hashtag red 00, green 00, blue 40. Alright. Now, how do you do that is you don't really need to create a new style because you already have a H1 here. So what you do is you select H1 from the CSS styles here, right click and select modify style. Now for here, it says it wants the color of H1, right? So under color, what you do is you type in hashtag 000040, which gives you shade of black, I think. Click OK. You will notice that the color is added to the selector. Now moving on to H3, same thing, select H3, right click, modify style, again the color, hashtag this time 404000. Click OK. Color is added. Now moving on to P for paragraph, right click, modify style, go to color, hashtag 000080. And click OK. Now, for the table's external border and background, we can work on the table selector here, but for internal grid lines, again, we need to work on TD. So first thing first, select table, right click, modify style. For external border, go to border. This is the external border. You need to change the border color to hashtag FFFF00, as well as the background. So moving on to background, the background color should be hashtag 6E859F. There you go. And click OK. Now for the internal grid line, again select Modify Style, go to Modify Style. For the border, hashtag 6E859F. And we are done with the CSS Selectors editing.